My wife lied to the police about my stepdaughter. My life took an unexpected turn the day that my 17-year-old son, Justin, showed up at my office in tears. My son has never been the emotional kind, and it's safe to say that I had never seen him so upset before, not even when he broke up with his longtime girlfriend a year ago. So, for him to show up at my work office in the middle of the day with tears streaming down his face, something terrible must have really happened. Once Justin was calm enough to explain to me what happened, he started by saying that he had a weird suspicion about his 19-year-old stepsister Melanie. Over the past week, she had been going on shopping trips with her friends and boasting about what she bought to her Instagram followers. This was strange for a very good reason. She could never afford to buy the sort of designer goods that she was boasting about. In addition to the extravagant shopping trips, she had also been online shopping like crazy. Justin told me that on more than one occasion, he would come back home from school and find a bunch of packages that had been delivered to our house. Her behavior raised the alarm for him, because Melanie was unemployed. I did give her and my son a monthly allowance, but it wasn't so much that she could afford to buy designer goods. I was the breadwinner of the family, and I knew for a fact that neither my wife nor my stepdaughter could afford those kinds of luxuries. Justin and Melanie never had a good relationship, with her being hostile toward my son for most of the time, so communication between them was almost non-existent. He told me that he did ask her about her shopping trips and how she could afford them, and Melanie shut him down pretty quickly, telling him not to poke his nose into her business. My son could sense that something fishy was going on, so he decided to check on his life savings that he kept enveloped in his wardrobe just in case, and it's a good thing that he did. When he grabbed the envelope that contained a bit over $1,000, which he had saved after working his butt off for a couple of years, he discovered that all his money was gone. As you would imagine, Justin was livid. He knew exactly who took his life savings. Everything made sense now. So, he went to his stepsister to confront her about the money. Again, she shut him down very quickly, telling him that all the money she spent on the shopping trips was hers and that she had no idea where his money went. The two of them had a heated argument that reduced my son to tears. I knew that Justin was working a part-time job and saving the majority of his income to surprise his best friend's dad. His best friend, Kyle, had passed away recently, and Justin made a promise to him to be there for the dad. It was going to be the dad's first birthday after the loss of his son, so Justin was going to fly out to California to surprise the dad and spend some quality time together. Justin's close friends had even chimed in with their own money to make sure that everything was covered that weekend. And now, all of that money was gone, thanks to his stepsister. Luckily, my boss let me go home early so I could deal with the issue. I was as livid as my son, if not more. I couldn't believe that Melanie would do something so heinous to her own brother. We all knew why Justin was saving up his hard-earned money, so for her to steal that money, even with that knowledge, that was on a different level of messed up. When I made it home, Melanie was in the living room on her phone. She didn't even look up at me when I called her name. She acted like a 13-year-old moody teenager even though she was months away from turning 20. When I called her name again, but this time with a stern tone, she blurted out a rude what and still avoided my eye contact. I asked her to come clean, to tell me the truth about what happened to Justin's money and that we could find a way to solve this issue. However, Melanie denied ever taking the money. She even told me to mind my own business and not to question her about something so ridiculous ever again. Her tone was arrogant and borderline unacceptable, and my patience was running thin. I explained to her that Justin's savings simply didn't vanish into thin air and that all fingers were pointed at her, and she just shrugged her shoulders at me. Instead of getting into a heated and probably fruitless argument with her, a brilliant idea popped into my mind. We had those dog surveillance cameras in many places around the house that we used to monitor our dogs, and there was one installed in the hallway where the bedrooms were. We had a simple rule that my wife and I set in place to avoid any conflict around the house. Neither Justin nor Melanie were allowed to go into each other's room in their absence for any reason whatsoever. So, if I catch Melanie on the surveillance footage walking toward Justin's bedroom, it would be damning evidence for her. And surprise, surprise, that was exactly what I saw when I checked the footage from a week ago. It's true that it only recorded her legs, but it was clear that she was headed toward Justin's bedroom and she walked out less than 5 minutes later. With the evidence in hand, I told Melanie that there was no point denying it. She clearly was the one who stole the money. Her argument changed from "it wasn't me" to "how do you even know it was me," as she still denied that she was the one walking into his bedroom in the video footage. Melanie started to become slightly more defensive now that the footage was outing her, and she told me all these shopping trips were funded by money that she had been saving. She stated that she had no idea Justin was even saving money, and that someone must have broken into the house if the money was really gone. No matter what I said to her, she continued to deny every accusation. Now I know why Justin was so frustrated that he had to visit me at my office in the middle of the day. Our argument came to a stop when my wife, Kelsey, came back from her outing. The moment we heard the front door close, Melanie's behavior completely changed and the waterworks started. She burst into tears when her mother walked into the living room and ran up to hug her, telling her that Justin and I were ganging up on her. As you would imagine, Kelsey was livid when she saw her daughter that distressed. She immediately pointed her fingers at us and asked me to explain. I told her the entire story and added that we already had video evidence that it was her daughter who walked into Justin's room and probably took his money. Instead of admitting that her daughter was, in fact, a thief, Kelsey then flipped the argument and started accusing my son of lying. She asked him how he could possibly have all this money saved up anyway, and that he was lying about the money being there in the first place. I knew that Justin did have the money saved up because he had been working part-time jobs for the longest time in order to save up. I might not have physically seen the money, but I 100% believe that Justin did have that money before Melanie stole it. The argument was getting nowhere, so I eventually had to ask Melanie to return all the things she had purchased and get a refund in order to give Justin back his money. Melanie downright refused and told me that it would be embarrassing for her to return those items. I told her it would be more embarrassing to get arrested for stealing $1,100 and that shut her up pretty quickly. We continued fighting for a while, and I explained to my wife that Melanie had broken more than one rule that we had set in place for the kids. The fact that she didn't respect house rules that we put there for a reason spoke volumes. I pointed out that if she wanted to continue living here, not only would she have to repay Justin the money she stole, but she would also have to chime in with the rent and bills. She was old enough to move out, get a job, and rent a place of her own. I let her live with us, rent-free, because she was still my stepdaughter. Now that she didn't respect the house rules, she would have to either move out or help me with the rent. That was when Kelsey interjected and told me that not only would Melanie not return Justin's savings that she apparently didn't take, but if I were to kick her out, Kelsey would also move out with her. I told both Kelsey and Melanie that we could avoid all this arguing and fighting and de-escalate the situation if they would just pay my son back his money, but much to my dismay, my wife and her daughter were adamant about not admitting that they were at fault. When they realized that I wasn't backing down on kicking Melanie out if they didn't pay Justin back, they both went upstairs and packed their bags. I was silent the whole time as I watched them pack a few days' worth of clothing. I knew that they were expecting me to beg them not to leave and to back down on my words because they were giving me death glares while packing. When they left, my son turned to me with a heartbroken look on his face. He immediately expressed his regret that the situation escalated to the point that my wife left me, but I stopped him before he could continue. Theft is theft, and there was no way I would allow it to happen under my roof. For the remainder of the day, I kept trying to find a solution that would make them pay Justin back. Obviously, since this wasn't just a couple $100 but $1,000, I could take the legal route. However, that would definitely ruin Melanie's future and for good. I would feel guilty if that were to happen, and that was my dilemma. She was the one who stole the money and refused to return it, so she does deserve whatever was coming her way if I were to take the legal route. However, she was still young and careless, and she still had a lot of maturing to do. If I involved the police with the issue, I would more or less ruin her future. The only solution that would ease my mind was the following. I was going to give her and my wife another chance to right their wrongs and return the money. If they still refused to do so, then there wasn't any reason why I wouldn't involve the police with the issue. I sent my wife a text message telling her that running away from the issue wasn't going to solve it. They owed my son his money and they needed to pay him back. I waited patiently for the entirety of the day, and I didn't receive a reply from her. My messages weren't even seen by her. It only made me realize how selfish and illogical they were both acting and that they could only be solved if I were to involve law enforcement. So, the following day, I decided to go to the police station and sort of scare my wife and stepdaughter into paying Justin back. I wanted them to know that I was serious about this. The police officer did call them and order them to come to the station, and they did. When they walked in, they acted like they had no idea why they were called to the station. They both faked their concern and pretended like they didn't know anything. When the police officer reiterated what I had told him earlier, questioning them about the money that was stolen from Justin and spent on luxury goods, Kelsey informed the officer that it was her money. She straight up told him that she had given the $1,100 to splurge on her shopping trips, and that it wasn't Justin's money in the first place. And the worst thing was, there was no proof that Justin had saved that money. He didn't have it saved in a bank account or anything like that, and no one knew about it except for us. So, in other words, we couldn't prove that the money was there in the first place. My son was extremely frustrated as we walked out of the station, and I was as well. We were actually told that there was nothing we could do to make them pay Justin back. The money was just gone. The following weekend, I was surprised to find my wife in the wee hours of the morning at my doorstep. She was accompanied by a sheriff who apparently was there for her safety while she got her stuff out. When I questioned her about what was going on, she told me that she was there to take all the furniture that she had bought with her since she was moving out. I was so baffled by her when she showed me the receipts that she had kept when we were purchasing the furniture. She actually managed to convince everyone that she was the one who bought all the furniture since she kept the receipts. But, the truth of the matter was, that I fully paid for all the furniture in cash. She just never threw away the receipts and kept them for a rainy day, I would guess. Again, there was no evidence that I was the one who bought the furniture. So, I stood there and watched as my wife emptied my house. She had hired a couple of movers who helped her with the tedious process. They took everything. The living room furniture, the bedrooms, all the electronics, everything. After she was gone, I received a call from my landlord a couple of hours later. Apparently, Kelsey paid him an astronomical amount of money to break the lease and force me to move out. So, she did have the money to easily return the stolen money to Justin. But, it seemed like my wife was out there to get me. She was screwing me over, and she was fully supported by her wealthy family. I hate to admit that I had a mental breakdown after receiving a phone call from my landlord. Everything was happening so fast that it felt like I was watching a movie. I went from living a somewhat happy life with my wife and kids to being homeless in less than a week. When Justin realized that we were getting evicted, he came up to me and told me that he was willing to forego the money and just forget everything that had happened in order for Kelsey and Melanie to come back. He kept apologizing for ruining everything, but I assured him that it wasn't on him. It was their fault and not his. I know it sounds cheesy, but I assured Justin that he was my life and the two of us were going to figure it out on our own. I would never feel comfortable again living under the same roof as my wife and Melanie. Although I pretended that everything was alright for Justin's sake, I still felt like I was at rock bottom. I didn't have enough cash on me at the moment to rent another house, and luckily, my landlord was kind enough to let me stay until the end of the month. Justin and I figured out that it would be better if we went ahead and stayed with my mother for the time being. I started with the divorce proceedings and I thought that once I divorced my wife, my son and I would be able to turn the page and start a new chapter. But, it seemed like karma had a completely different plan in mind. One day, my emergency card was denied when I was getting gas for my car. I thought it was a glitch or something and I tried again, but it was denied once again. That was how I found out that Melanie had opened up 3 credit cards in my name using the joint account I had with my ex-wife. Over the last period, she had maxed out the 3 credit cards, and now I was $15,000 in debt. I immediately filed a police report and Melanie was finally arrested for identity theft and credit card fraud. I was informed that with the amount she had stolen from me that it was a guaranteed felony. I was advised by numerous people, including the prosecutor, to solve the issue outside of court. He warned me that Melanie would be a felon for life and that I needed to think it through before I proceeded. I didn't need to think anything through though. Melanie got what she deserved.